Hello, friends, and welcome to the Exam Room with Nurse Alice, the show where we take a closer look at things going on in the world today. And I'm so excited that you're joining us again for another episode. We are here every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do this show because it's very important that we get into your homes and talk to you guys, talk about things that are going on in the world, and help you guys just understand, explain things, answer your questions. So this really is a show for you because we are a family here on blackdoctor.org. And so tonight's conversation, I'm going to, it's not one that I'm really excited to have, considering the circumstances. As many of you guys know, and as the world is still deeply in shock from this past weekend's passing of actor Chadwick Boseman, who played the iconic characters such as Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, James Brown, and most notably Black Panther in the Marvel superhero movies, died of colon cancer at the very young age of 43. Guys, this is something that comes as a shock to many of us, and mostly because the actor kept most of his health matters very private, which he was entitled to. But nevertheless, Chadwick Boseman is someone who we celebrated in who the world celebrated, not just in our African American communities, but the world celebrated. He was vibrant. He was a philanthropist. He was an amazing actor, so kind, so generous, and just a very kindred spirit. And so this evening, we want to remember him. I know many of us are still mourning, but let's celebrate his life. Let's carry on his legacy, and let's empower ourselves to learn more and do better to prevent the disease that took our Black king prematurely. So this evening, we're going to be having a conversation on the topic of colon cancer. And to join me in this conversation, I have some very special guests, very knowledgeable in the field, and I'm sure many of you may recognize them. But joining me for this evening's conversation, first I have Dr. Scott Metcalf, who is a board-certified family medicine physician with over 20 years of experience, and who specializes in preventative medicine. He's based in Atlanta. He's been featured on HLN, Essence, and several other media outlets. And you may recognize him because he and his wife, Dr. Contessa Metcalf, are from the hit series Bravo's Married to Medicine. Please welcome Dr. Scott. Hi, Dr. Scott.
Hey, Nurse Alice. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We're excited to have you because it's primary care provider, a Black male. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to share with us this evening, so it's going to be really important. So thank you for joining us. And then as well, joining us in the conversation, we have Dr. Lynn O'Connor. She's a world-renowned colorectal surgery specialist. She is, listen here, she is the chief at 2 hospitals, guys, 2. Okay, she's the chief of colorectal surgery at Mercy Medical Center in Rockville Center, New York, as well as St. Joseph's Hospital in Bethpage, New York, and she runs 2 clinics. And her mission is really to provide her patients, especially Black women, with the foremost treatment, technology, and information related to preventative public health issues and colon and rectal health. She's also been featured several times throughout the media. She's been on NBC News, the Tom Joyner Morning Show, Sirius XM Radio, Sway in the Morning. Please welcome to the conversation, Dr. Lynn. Hi, Dr. Lynn.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to have both of you guys. Now, everyone, please join us in the conversation in the chat box. Put all your questions, your comments there. I'll be asking some questions that I have, as well as your questions. And if you have comments, again, this is like a large family conversation, and we're kind of like the big brothers and big sisters leading it, but you two are still very important. We want to hear what you have to say, and we're going to get to your questions. So please start putting those in the chat box. Let's see, turn the volume down. So, okay, I'm hearing some things about our sound, so let me turn my speaker down a little bit. Okay, I hope that's a little bit better. Sorry for any feedback. Everybody's on the internet right now, right? We're all forced to drive and be on technology, but I'd like to go ahead and get the conversation going. So, Dr. Scott, primary care provider. Now, let me back up. I work in the emergency room and ICU. When I'm seeing people with colorectal issues, usually it's something that's acutely happening. They didn't know that they had all this, and we're rushing them inpatient to maybe they're needing surgery or some other thing. You, on the other hand, are having more likely have the opportunity to have them before all of this, so can you tell us what kind of questions or conversations are you having with your patients when it comes to colorectal cancer? And if you could just, I didn't mention this before, but just kind of tell the audience a little bit about colorectal cancer and what you're talking to your patients about.
Okay, well, I'm a family medicine physician, and so I kind of thrive on preventative medicine. And then most of preventative medicine is just educating your patients, letting your patients know what age-appropriate tests that they need to be screened for. And up until recently, for colon cancer, the screening detection, they wanted us to start doing screening colonoscopies at age 50. Now, all the way back to med school, we learned about signs and symptoms of colon cancer. And with colon cancer, you have to, it's very vague symptoms, as Dr. O'Connell will definitely tell you, that they can start off with a change in bowel habits, which means they would have normal bowel movements and all of a sudden they start getting diarrhea, or their stool starts becoming thin in caliber. And what I mean is, like, sometimes it's thin as a pencil, which means there could be some type of constriction of the area that the stool is passing. Fatigue, weight loss, and unfortunately, a lot of times anemia, because colon cancer at times can be with the mass, it can be causing the loss of blood, and that can be associated with no blood in the stool. And when we typically screen each year for age-appropriate screening, we just send them home with colorectal cards, and we want to get 3 stool samples on each card, and they can mail them back into us, and we put a developing solution on it to tell if there's some digested blood, in a sense, on the colorectal cards. And if they are positive, then then we would want to go further and test them, and that would be including like a CBC, a workup, and a colonoscopy if it's deemed appropriate. I don't know if any docs perform sigmoidoscopies anymore, but but definitely we want to just make sure that, like, on the front lines as a primary care physician, I want to screen. So 90% of colon cancer occurs in ages 50 and over. So that's why that we pretty much used to start screening at over age 50. But I've seen colon cancer in, unfortunately, about 3 Black males being diagnosed as early as 38, and with absolutely no warning signs at all. So I mean, there's always something rare with the illness. I mean, every time you have an illness, things can happen, and unfortunately, African Americans, we do have a higher incidence. We have a higher incidence of aggressive colorectal cancer. We have it. As typically with most diseases we typically present with a later stage in presentation. And in the case of Chadwick Boseman, he was, probably if he died at age 43, he was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer 4 years ago, and that means he was 39 with stage 3, so that means he could have had it at least 5 to 8 years earlier. Which is pretty it's pretty scary, and it hits me close to home because my father passed of colon cancer when I was 5 years old. So so I've always kind of I think that's what drove me into medicine, drove me into primary care, because I want to do the ounce of prevention equals a pound of cure, and so that's one of the main reasons I think that pretty much drove me into medicine.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Scott. Now, Dr. Lane, so by the time either they've been seen by Dr. Scott and he's referred them to you, or they've come through my emergency rooms, something bad has happened, and then we're referring them to you. By the time you see patients, where are they at? What's the conversation and your first interaction with most of your patients?
Well, I mean, I do my own screening colonoscopies for my patients. So I have patients who come to me directly for their screening colonoscopies, or I'll have patients referred by their gynecologist, by their primary care physician, by the internist, by the urologist. So even I've had patients referred to me by their cardiologist. So and like Dr. Metcalf said, it's really a good preventative type of situation here. Because when you're thinking about colorectal cancer in 2020 alone, we're looking at about 140,000 diagnoses of colorectal cancer.
Wow.
We're looking at 50,000 deaths in 2020 from colorectal cancer. And of those new cases, we're going to have about 11% of them, of the colon cancer diagnoses, are going to be in people who have young onset. So that's people who are 50 years of age or older. 11% of them are going to be 50 years or younger. 11% are going to be colon cancer, and 18% are going to be rectal cancer. So we've seen a significant uptick since 1994, about 51% increase in cases. So when my patients are coming to me, it's simply because they've got some rectal bleeding, they've got some pain, they've got some discomfort, they got some constipation. Those are the younger ones. Now, the older ones have really gotten the message out. My 50, 60, 70-year-olds, they're getting screened. Their numbers are coming down. But the younger people who are coming to me, I'll never forget the 30-year-old woman who came to me 3 weeks before she's supposed to get married, and she just wanted her hemorrhoids taken care of. And those hemorrhoids turned out to be aggressively advanced rectal cancer. So what my patients are coming to me with, they're coming to me with rectal bleeding. They're coming to me with constipation. They're coming to me with some weight loss, sometimes anemia, change in their bowel habits. They're just not going as much as they normally do. And the thing is, you don't have to go every single day, but what you need to know is your normal. And when you change and deviate from your normal, that's when that's a problem. So people are coming to me, my bowel habits have changed. And that means they're either not moving as normally, they're smaller stools, they're thinner stools, like Dr. Metcalf talked about. So those issues are the ones that you really don't want to ignore. And the problem is when you're thinking about younger patients, because they're so young, we're really quick to just say, oh, it's just a hemorrhoid. Oh, it's just indigestion. Oh, it's just, you're overworked and you're tired and that's why you're fatigued. And women, sometimes they write off their anemia and their fatigue because they have heavy menstrual cycles. So it's important to delve into what's going on with those patients, talk to them about their family history, and just don't diagnose a hemorrhoid and leave it at that.
Exactly. Okay. So guys, for those of you who are joining us, we are having a conversation here where we want to learn more about colon cancer. What is it? What can we do about it? And I'm sorry, I didn't even preface the conversation because I kind of assume that people know when they hear colon cancer, they know exactly what it is. But colon cancer is actually short for colorectal cancer, right? So this is a cancer that affects the large intestine and the rectum. So that's what we're talking about. And as both of the good doctors were mentioning, were some of the signs or symptoms that present that may prompt someone to, hey, go get care right away. Now we're talking about someone who's symptomatic. Let me dial back a little bit about screening. So screening, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, screening is something that should be done even before you have symptoms. Is that correct? Right? We're screening to, just to like make sure we're all clear on board. By the time you have symptoms and you're going to be seen, that's something else. So when we talk about screening, we want to get it early on. Is that correct?
That's the point. Yes, you want to get it early on. And that's why the American Cancer Society has dropped the age from 50 to 45, because we're understanding that younger and younger patients are having problems. So you want to get them before that. So that's the whole purpose, because if you can catch a cancer in its early stages, you've got a 95% 5-year survival for early stage cancer. When you get to those advanced stages, now your survival is going decreasing significantly, like sometimes 30, 40% 5-year survival. So that's the whole point of screening. If there's a polyp, you remove it before it becomes a cancer. And if you find a cancer, you get it when it's early, before it's actually spread. Because as Dr. Metcalf had said, Chadwick Boseman presented with advanced disease, stage 3. That means it's already spread. It's in lymph nodes. He's getting chemotherapy. So his survival rate from the gate is decreased. So that's why you want to have screening.
Right. So,
okay.
Chadwick Boseman, diagnosed in 2016. So we put him at what age? 39?
39.
So 39, he already had stage 3 cancer. Yeah. So either you can answer this. How long does it generally take for a precancerous polyp to develop into something like a stage 3? So if we kind of backtrack and reverse engineer this, At what age do you suspect, and Dr. Scott, you might have said this or alluded to this, at what age do you think this actually started brewing? And I mean, when should he have gotten screened? If we could go back and say, and do some math and what we know on the science, when do you believe, you guys, we're just estimating, right? We don't know for sure. What do you think was the age range in which this cancer or these precancerous cells began?
I would estimate that it's probably between 5 and 8 years, usually right around 7 years. So right around age 32 or 33 was where he may have been developing polyps.
Okay. So, and I've read, I've been doing a lot of research about when we're talking about colon cancer, who's at risk, because we kind of have these blanket statements. So like the U.S. Preventative Task Force said 50, other groups say 45. And then I've read some things where even in the African American community that we have, and because we know social determinants of health and so many other things, lack of access to health, quality health care, we're kind of behind the 8 ball. And so that we actually have higher rates, higher incidence of colorectal cancer and worse outcomes.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Oh, you guys hear that? I hope you guys are listening. You guys, this is really, really important stuff. So Black folks.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
Light skin, dark skin, still Black folks. We are at higher risk. So we definitely, and this is why we're having this conversation. This is a chance for you to ask your questions. Let's talk about this. So can either of you talk to us about some of the risk factors? Okay, so we said African American, but are there things like in our diet, in our environment that puts us at risk?
Absolutely. There are a ton of risk factors that, we absolutely have that, we need to look at. I mean, one of our lifestyle, a sedentary lifestyle where, we've got Uber Eats. We don't even have to get off the couch to get our food. We're not exercising as much. American Heart Association said if you can just exercise as little as 30 minutes a day, moderate intensity, that can do a long way to stave off colon cancer. Smoking, that's clearly something we all know at this point in time that we shouldn't be doing. And it's not getting enough fruits and vegetables and fiber, loading up on those nitrites and those processed foods. We've got to stop with the Burger King and the McDonald's and the Taco Bell. Everything's in moderation. But if that's your diet and that's what you're eating, then you're not doing the things that you need to be doing in terms of exercising, eating right, getting enough rest, decreasing your stress. But the one thing that we really need to address is the disparity in healthcare and the disparity in access to healthcare that plagues a lot of African American, low income, low socioeconomic status folks. And as a whole, we're just not getting the information out that we need to be screened. We don't have the access, and the disparities in screening is what really I think is driving the numbers.
Yes, I was in some of my research, and we know this, not everyone has access to healthcare insurance. It can be very expensive, or they don't have a job that provides that type of coverage. And while Medicare seems to be great with their colon cancer screening, but of course, most of those who meet eligibility are of the age range, and like you said, they're getting their screening. But for those who have Medicaid, although the national government says that colorectal screening cancer is covered, it's only covered for those who, it varies upon states. Most states cover it if you're symptomatic, but not always if you're asymptomatic. So what options does that leave someone, guys? If I don't have a great job that provides me insurance, and we just need to talk about it, because I don't want someone to say, well, I just don't have insurance, so I'm not going to go. What options do these people have to get this type of important screening? Because maybe they're having some changes in their bowels, some upset stomach and discomfort, gas, unexpected weight loss. What can that person do who does not have insurance?
Now, when you're dealing with healthcare disparities, being in primary care, and some people are underinsured as well, and at times it's difficult to even get someone approved for a screening colonoscopy, being under the age of 50. So that right there is a disparity in itself. So we have to sometimes submit a referral 3 or 4 times just to get someone referred for a screening colonoscopy when we feel that they need to be screened. Whether they had a positive, hemoglobin stool, or if they're having symptoms. I mean, like you said, those symptoms are so vague, like fatigue, weight loss. or changing caliber of your stool, or just a change in the pattern of your bowels. They're so vague, So, and I hate to say it, but a lot of times insurance companies probably don't want to pay for this. Now, what they do cover, what we can get referrals for easier are for people with a higher risk. So that includes family history, of course. So if a family member, first degree generation family member has had colon cancer, then their children and brothers, siblings, they're all at risk for it. There's a thing called FAP. That's a familiar. I know what polyposis. I always say that. That's where people that have polyps in their colon, they have a higher risk of developing colon cancer. What's it, Lynch syndrome? And then the other thing is we all know people with inflammatory bowel disease. So people with Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, they're a higher risk of developing colorectal cancer. So those people need to be screened earlier, and it shouldn't be a fight, because like I said, and ounce of prevention will save a life. Because it's beautiful that when someone goes in and says, "Doc, I had 3 polyps," they said one of them had a little bit of possible cancer at the tip, and I had to go back in 3 to 5 years. I'd rather hear that every day as opposed to someone getting the bad news that it invaded the mucosal wall. That now they're already at stage 2. When they go get the screening colonoscopy. So I urge most of my patients to get a screening colonoscopy early, just like I urge all Black males to get a PSA early. It's just something that we know affects us disproportionately. So as a physician, I feel it's my due diligence to kind of go over and aboard of getting them screened early and doing what I have to do to get them screened.
Okay, now if I can ask you guys, so colonoscopy. So people are fearful of that because they're like, oh my gosh, you're going to put a tube where? It's going to go what? I got to drink what and poop all my brains out? Like, what's happening here? So that could be frightening for some people. And there are other types of screenings and tests that can be done. Can you tell us a little bit? Although colonoscopy is the golden standard, right? That's the gold standard, so they can actually visualize everything. There are some other tests or things that can be done. Can you tell us about that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the most important thing is that you get screened. Yes. Now, with a colonoscopy, that is the only modality that's going to allow you for diagnostic and therapeutic treatment. And what I mean by that is diagnostic, we put the scope up, we see the polyp, and now we can actually remove the polyp. So that is the one thing that it's a one-stop shop. So, Cologuard, when you do the get, go, gone, that's all wonderful and fine. However, if there is a false positive, guess what? You're still going to have you're still going to get referred for a colonoscopy. If you do those fecal occult blood tests, which are good, I mean, it's still helpful that you do them every year. You will find a colon cancer. But the problem is, if you're taking certain medications, it can give you a false positive. If you're taking certain, like aspirin, if you're taking certain foods, like we all love beets, it's going to make it turn red. That's something that could give you a false positive. Certain meats and nitrites can give it a false positive. So you want to make sure that you have something that's just a little bit more reliable. But the most important thing, the guidelines now, just get screened. So if you don't have that colonoscopy outfit, you can at least get the fecal occult blood test, but you should pair that with a flexible sig. Most people don't do a flexible sigmoidoscopy because it only looks at the left side of the colon. And what a lot of people don't know, for some unknown reason, African Americans have more right-sided colon cancers than left-sided colon cancers. So if you do a flexible sigmoidoscopy, you may have a colon cancer. And one of the other problems with the fecal occult blood test is even if you have a polyp or a cancer, it doesn't bleed all the time. So you can have a false negative test where you actually have a polyp, you actually have a cancer, but it's just not bleeding at that time. So the stool can pass through and not bleed. So those are some of the things you can do. There's also we don't require barium minimus anymore as screening tests. Now there is a CT colonography where you can have a CT scan picture And
Is that the virtual colonoscopy that I've heard? Okay, good. I was going to ask that.
Now, the problem with the virtual colonoscopy is sometimes patients don't clean out as well as they should. So there's still a little bit of residual stool. And if there's still a little residual stool, that can look like a polyp on a virtual colonoscopy. So guess what you're doing? You're cleaning out again, and you're going to go have a colonoscopy. And you do need to clean out for a virtual colonoscopy. So if you're going to clean out once, you should really clean out and get the real thing done. However, the key is there are multiple screening modalities. As long as you're screened, that's what matters.
Okay. Okay, very good. And thank you for sharing that. So you guys, you heard Dr. Lynn. So if you're on certain medication like aspirin, you're eating beets, those are just some of the things. But that's interesting because I've seen lots of providers there, people don't want the colonoscopy, so they give them the yeah, so they can go do that. But that's interesting. So if your polyps are not actively bleeding, it might test okay, but you truly still have polyps.
Right. And the other thing is you have to take a piece of your stool. So that's one thing that's a negative turnoff for most people because they don't want to touch their own feces. Right. So even if they do have to touch their feces, they're the ones who are choosing which part of the feces to send. So they can take this part on the left side and the right side has the blood. So it's a very variable test. But the beauty of that test, though, is if you do it every year, eventually you will find something. If something's there and you're doing it every year. This is not a screening test that you do every 5 years. And if you're going to do a fecal occult blood test, you usually pair that with a flex sig, which is going around half the colon. But like I told you before, the problem with the flex sig, you're not going to see a right-sided colon cancer.
Just my opinion, but if anything's going to go up there and look, you might as well just go ahead and do the whole shebang, y'all. None of this, I'm just going to take a look at a little bit of it. Just put everything done. And I think it's real important. So part of it as African Americans, we just need to get over the fact that that it's a tube that's going to go somewhere that's usually exit only. I get it. But
the one thing that I tell my patients, because the majority of them are scared of the anesthesia, and if you've had a colonoscopy, that's the best nap you ever had. But the one thing I tell my patients when they tell me they don't want the scope going up, I said, look, I can either prep you for a colonoscopy or I can prep you to take your colon out. One or the other. So you want to get prepped for a colonoscopy? I'd rather you do that than I prep you for a colon surgery.
Yeah.
So they usually understand that, listen, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
I can't argue with that. Now, Dr. Scott, let me ask you, and not to pick on you because you're a male, but you're the only male on this panel. Are you seeing any differences with men versus women and their screening? Like, are men more hesitant to do so, don't want to have that conversation? Just curious, are there any gender differences when it comes to colon cancer?
Men always seem to be a little bit more stubborn, and especially the psychosocial tough guy who, I'm not getting that no, you're not even gonna check my prostate. Nope, nobody's putting anything up my rear. And the main thing is we just have to continue to educate them. So I just know that I'll be in the room with them a little bit more extra time. And I usually tell them, I say personally, my father passed away of colon cancer. So my brothers and I, we all started getting our screen probably right around 35, and we continue to get our screens as recommended. And and just reassure them like, hey, I guarantee you won't be sore afterwards. The prep is probably the worst part, but at the same time, you'll feel, I say, if you want to lose weight, if you want to hear what someone talk about having a detox, if you had to go do the old go lightly where you had to drink the solution and hope, they do different methods now, but you would be clean from here to here, and so I would tell them you're going to get the best clean out you've ever had in your life. You're going to, when you won't remember anything. Only thing you remember is when the nurse says, I'm going to give you an IV, I'm going to put a little medicine in this IV that's going to make you sleepy, and you're asleep already. So, and you wake up and say, is it done? And it's just that simple. And I tell you, it's just that simple. It is nothing, You'd rather get a colonoscopy than to get a fingernail drained. I guarantee you that.
Okay.
I say if you have a little infection of Pernicious around your fingernail, then we have to numb you up and cut it and drain it to drain the infection away from your fingernail.
Oh.
Way more painful than the colonoscopy.
Okay.
There's no pain.
Okay. Good information. And I want to get to some comments and some questions here. So I'm going to scroll through. I mean, they've been popping up here. We have Don G. It says, is Cologuard a good way to start screening? I think you may have answered that.
Yeah, I'll answer it again because they may have just tuned in. Cologuard, the most important thing is that you get screened, period. If a patient absolutely does not want to have a colonoscopy, fine, you can do a Cologuard. But the issue is if there are some false positives, then you're going to need to get a colonoscopy. And if you're young and healthy and you're of the age of screening, I would recommend a screening colonoscopy.
Okay, good. Let's see. A lot of people commenting. Kimberly Austin, Kathy, said, what is a PSA? Dr. Scott, you mentioned that you encourage men to do that. Can you explain that to the viewers?
Oh, PSA, just prostate-specific antigen. That's where we screen for prostate cancer, and it's an annual blood test that we take with their annual physical and their annual labs for any male over age 40.
Okay, good. So, guys, these are great questions, and even though we were talking about colon cancer, we're going to shift it to prostate. We're trying to prevent all types of cancer here, guys, and we want to answer your questions. So these are good. No, the silly question is the question that's not asked. I think Tracy N. McDonald Cunningham said, it's a comment. It says CDC recommends screening colonoscopy at age 45 for people of African descent. But there are people who should actually get screened before that. So if I'm someone who does have a family history, or I have ulcerative colitis, how soon can I get screened?
Well, the indication is if you have a family history, you should be screened 10 years prior to that index case. So in other words, if your mother or your father had colon cancer at age 40, then you need to be screened at age 30. If they had it at 45, you need to be screened at age 35. If you have a genetic predisposition, then you need to be screened, such as FAP. Your screening regimen will be more like every 2 years. If you have inflammatory bowel disease, as Dr. Metcalf talked about with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, the longer you have that diagnosis, the greater your risk of having colon cancer. So your screening frequency is going to go up to every 1 to 2 years sometimes. So family history of polyps and cancer, genetic predispositions such as FAP, Lynch syndrome, or if you do have some of the inflammatory bowel diseases, those are issues where you would be screened sooner.
Okay,
but
thank you.
One thing I want people to understand, those are isolated cases. Those are about 25% of the colon cancers that present. 75% of people who present with colon cancer are people who present with no family history,
right,
no history of polyps, and no predisposing conditions. So they don't have any of those symptoms. And when you get to the young onset colon cancer patients who are 50 years of age or older, 62% of them present just like that. No symptoms whatsoever, no family history.
Okay. I have some more questions I'm going to get to, but I just wanted to ask real quickly. Earlier, we talked about, your older patients they're going in, they're getting their screen. They're counting, they're very watchful of their bowels. Because bowel pattern is extremely important, I guess, when you get a certain age. But our younger folks, must be something I ate. That'll go away, type of thing. Is there a sense of embarrassment? I mean, how much of that is just I'm too embarrassed to make an appointment of all things, my stool? Like, people are having heart attacks, people are having strokes. Like, I don't want to make an appointment about my stool. Are you seeing any of that, Dr. Scott or Dr. Lynn? People just like, I didn't think it was so important enough.
I think more or less people don't come in complaining about changing stool habits or stool pattern unless they're having like a chronic constipation or a chronic diarrhea, because I do see a lot of people with just irritable bowel syndrome, And most women that I know that I'm a patient will have like irritable bowel syndrome or constipation, more of a constipation presentation. So typically, and those, they still are, for me, they're ones that I send for a screening colonoscopy, even with irritable bowel syndrome, because it's a diagnosis of exclusion.
Yeah.
So we can't just say you have IBS, you 30-year-old, person with constipation and abdominal pain and bloating. We need to do a full-fledged workup, on the patients. So.
Now, I do see a lot of people who are embarrassed. And if you think about it, most people, I'm a specialty. That's all I work with, the colon, the rectum, and the anus. So when they come to me, they're coming to me with a problem. And they're scared and they don't know. And the first thing someone thinks about when they see blood is, oh my God, I have cancer. So it is a scary situation, and it's an embarrassing thing to talk about. But the most important thing is to make a connection with your patient, develop a rapport, make it safe for them to be able to speak to you. And I always tell my patients, you're here to see me. What do you think that person out there is here to see me for at the same time? You all are here to see me for the same reason. So it's okay. It's all right. Just tell me what's going on so we can fix it. But nobody wants to talk about that area.
Okay. So we're talking about it tonight, guys. We love you guys. We want to help empower you with education. So when we know better, we do better. And, if just even we save one person's life with a piece of information today, we will have done our job. So this is a very important conversation. Please make sure that you're sharing it. We started a watch party. You share the replay, because this is good stuff. Now, I'm going to go back to another comment. Naletta Conway. Naletta wrote, I was diagnosed at age 43 with stage 4 colon cancer. Suffered with severe abdominal pain and blood and stool, did not know at the time what was happening, then misdiagnosed. I finally received correct diagnosis, surgery, and took chemotherapy. Fortunately, I survived 17 years strong. So, Naletta, first off, thank you so much for sharing your testimony. We appreciate that, you guys, and hearing stories like Naletta lets us know that when you get screened early, when you do intervention, you can survive it. You can survive it. She's a testimony to that. So let's go ahead and segue the conversation to, I've looked at my risk factors, I've done some screening, I've now been diagnosed with colon cancer. If you can tell us a little bit about how many stages are there and what kind of treatment options are out there. Dr. Lynn or Dr. Scott, either one.
Well, there's actually, we're looking at 4 stages of colon cancer. You look at stage 1, where it's an early stage and it's gone, it's gone slow, it's confined to the wall of the lining of the colon. You think of the colon as a tube, and there's lining in there. Stage 2 is when it's gone somewhat into, but not through the whole lining. Stage 3 is when it's gone through the lining and you're at the lymph nodes. So it's gone through what we call the serosa, the lining of the colon. And stage 4 is when it's gone completely through the lining of the colon and it's at other organs such as the liver or the lung. So that's what we call, stage 4 widely metastatic. So, and stage 3 is local. It's regional disease because it's just in the lymph nodes. So that's what you're looking at. So, you talk about screening, fine. You get to the point where, okay, I'm diagnosed, I have it, now what? That patient usually goes to Dr. Metcalf, and they would have what we call a CEA level, a carcinoembryonic antigen level. It's a blood test. And we do that level as a baseline, because once we treat the patient, that level should go down. It's not specific for colorectal cancer because there are other things that can increase your CEA level, but most times if you have an elevated level, if you're treating it, it goes down. That serves as a baseline moving forward, whether or not the patient can have a recurrence. Once they get their CEA level, then they need to go for a CAT scan. The CAT scan shows whether or not it's spread to all those organs that we talked about. After they've had their CAT scan, they've had their CEA level, we know the results of the colonoscopy, they need to get clearance. And that's when they would go again to Dr. Metcalf, their primary care surgeon, to make their primary care physician, to make sure that they're stable enough for surgery. So they get an EKG, they get a chest X-ray, they get their blood work done. So they make sure that they're hardy enough for surgery. And then they go to the hospital, and the hospital would do pre-admission testing, some of the same tests, and just check off the boxes to make sure that everything is done. And that's the point where the patient then goes home. They have to prep again for surgery. When you're looking at surgery, there are many options to do, depending upon what part of the colon is involved and if something is spread. Now, for patients who have had advanced disease, we generally treat them with chemotherapy. But if they do have advanced localized disease, we can usually sometimes do surgery as well as removing that isolated lobe of the liver. But the majority of times, patients they go for surgery. I try to do my surgeries minimally invasive and laparoscopic because it's a shorter hospitalization stay, it's a quicker recovery, it's a better cosmetic result, and patients do well. They get out of the hospital sooner. There are some times where you have to have open surgery, which means you have an enlarged, enlarged incision. So most hospitalization stays are usually about 3 days if for a laparoscopic. They're out of bed, they're eating the same night of surgery, they're walking around. As long as their vital signs are stable, their labs are normal, they do well after surgery, they're home.
Okay. So sounds like, guys, again, early intervention, early treatment means for better outcomes and higher survival rates. Now, let me just ask a real question because we don't like to talk about this, but I'm gonna talk about it. I'm just gonna ask a question. I'll take that hit. Dr. Scott, when someone has been diagnosed with colon cancer, that can be very traumatizing. Very, like, I could just imagine. Well, I can't imagine. Let me be honest. I can't imagine having that diagnosis. And for some people, I know I've had friends who've had breast cancer and other types of cancer, feel like my life flashed before my eyes. Like things take on a new meaning, things mean differently. Are there some other things when someone receives a diagnosis of colon cancer that they need to do or make sure are in order or they're taking place so that they can stay on this kind of road to recovery and keep doing things? Because I can only say some people would just probably some people may go into depression or sadness, or do I need to get a advanced directive? Like all of these conversations that we don't like to talk about. Can you give us some examples of things that people might want to think of and consider when looking at their overall health once they receive the diagnosis of cancer?
Well, absolutely, and that's one good thing when you get a new patient, you always want to discuss advanced directives in advance because people will automatically they're already shocked that they have a diagnosis of a cancer, and then if you hit them with the advanced directive right there, they're gonna question their mortality automatically. Because I mean people we still have people in our community that still say, don't say the C word. I don't want to hear the C word. Like it's a forbidden word to say. But I mean, it occurs and it happens. Now, when you're diagnosed with cancer, it's a major life-changing event right there on the spot. It's not a gradual process. It's like boom, right there. The patient know that they have cancer. So their whole life from up until that point has changed. And usually you want to make sure that they have a strong support system.
Yeah.
And there's always referral to counseling. I think that's always good. They're all, and of course their support groups, their cancer support groups for every type of cancer there. And even the CDC has the listing for support groups that you can call. And so, you want to make sure that their spirits are up, because with any chronic illness, the happier the person or the happier the patient, the more the patient smiles, the more positive outcome, they typically have a better outcome with treatment, whether it be chemotherapy, surgery. And so you want to keep that person's spirits up and keep them as active as possible. And I mean, you got to think, because, Chadwick Boseman, he filmed Black Panther while he was going through chemo. I
Right.
mean, can you imagine? I mean, what he actually went through, and as we had zero idea what was going on, and he had multiple surgeries in between those 4 years and about 4 different films that he made. And of course, we know he was a positive guy because we're seeing everything that's being posted on the internet about him, showing that he was absolutely, just, a God sent, person.
Right. Truly a hero, not only on screen, but off screen. And he actually, he gave us hope. I know that might sound weird, but no, his character and the way he carried himself, the things that he did, it really, was a reminder of what Black excellence is and how strong we are, how capable we are. He talks a lot about purpose. So the mindset is very important. It's like, as you said, Dr. Scott, making sure someone has a good support system, because the mind is a very powerful thing. If you think something's going to work, it's worked. If you already think that something's not going to work, it's not going to work. At least our mind can lead us to believe that. Now, I'm getting some questions in the chat box so we've talked about like surgery and treatments and those things. What about some natural things? So, are there certain vitamins, diets? What are some other things that would be recommended to me during this, after a diagnosis, other than, we're going to do surgery and these things? Are there other things that I can do to help aid me in that recovery process, or foods that I can eat that would help boost my immune system, or make my gut stronger, anything like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, initially after surgery, you're going to want to stay on what we call a low residue diet, and that's no raw fruits, no raw vegetables, no red meat, because after the surgery where the colon is cut, it has to be put back together, and that's called an anastomosis, and you don't want to stress that with certain kinds of foods. But there are definite foods that you can eat. I mean, you want to have foods that are high in zinc, because zinc boosts the immune system. You want to have foods that are high in vitamin C, because and also that are help with the collagen production. So there's like a healing trio of foods that you want to have. Foods that will help with the IgA production, and even probiotics after surgery I find are helpful, because the whole, what we call flora, that's the mix of good bacteria and bad bacteria in the colon, gets disrupted. It gets disrupted from surgery, it gets disrupted from antibiotics, and it gets disrupted from the clean out. So you want to try to repopulate the colon to help that with probiotics. So
is that like my yogurt? Because I've seen stuff like it in the yogurt.
Yogurt is the absolute perfect, inexpensive probiotic. I mean, there are tons of them out on the market. When you're looking for probiotics, you want to make sure that you have live active cultures. You want to make sure that you're looking at the box that shows actually what cultures there are. And you want to make sure that there are at least, a billion or more live active cultures that are there in order for it to be something that's beneficial. Check the shelf life. And most times, if you keep them refrigerated, that'll keep the probiotics alive longer.
Okay.
And more importantly, you have to see your physician and continue to see your physician when you're diagnosed. And we definitely are not advocating that you go see somebody who says they can give you some magic pills that can help cure colon cancer, because we know there are a lot of naturopaths out there who definitely I'm sorry, I can't decline. Okay. We know there are a lot of naturopaths out there who may recommend some treatment that's not FDA approved, that has never been proven effective, but you want to go with somebody like Dr. McConnor that knows how to treat this illness, that knows that you're either going to have surgery, chemotherapy, or a combination of both.
Right. Okay. And what we're talking about are adjuncts, something that you can add to it.
Right.
And you cannot, and I'm glad you made that point, because it's important to say you cannot substitute that as cure. Because unfortunately, I have had people who have done coffee enemas trying to cure their cancer. They've gone down to certain other countries and had so much other alternative treatment, and it did not bode well. So,
okay. You guys, so it's adjunct. So you still got to see, Dr. O'Connor. You still got to follow up with Dr. Fat or Dr. Metcalf, and they're going to talk to you about all these other things you can do in addition to. We're still getting a lot of questions about diet and things. I have people are asking about sea moss or broth. And let me just ask this, because we talked about two things. We're talking about a preventative diet. So that's when you fresh fruits and vegetables and less leave out the processed foods, less red meats, no less. I'll say less alcohol, because it's okay to have a glass of wine occasionally to celebrate, right? Responsibly and in moderation. So don't say, no, Alice, that I just talk it back every day. No, that's what I said. But everything in moderation. So that's the preventative diet. Some of what we were just talking about just recently was the diets once you've been diagnosed or you've had surgery, some other things. So either of you want to weigh in on CMOS? Is CMOS helpful as an adjunct in your digestive health?
You have to be careful. There are so many things, again, that are not FDA approved. And when you're getting into that realm of herbal or other types of alternative medicines, you don't know what else is in those compounds. And the other thing you have to take into consideration is you may have other medications that you're taking that can interact with those herbal medicines or other types of other treatments that you're going to do, and that can counteract the effectiveness of your blood pressure medications, of your anti-thrombotic medications. So you really have to be very careful with dabbling in certain types of other treatments.
Right. So it sounds like the most important thing is that if you're interested in taking something like that, make sure you discuss it with your physician so they know what you're taking, and we can make sure whatever you're doing is in your best interest and is safe. Now, I'm going to ask this question because Reggie, who's been very active in our chat box, says, ask the good doctors if they still eat red meat, if they still eat meat. So,
yeah, I'll have a burger. I'll have a burger every now and then. I mean, I don't have steak on a regular. If we're going out and it's a celebration, yeah, I'll have a burger. I'll have a glass of wine. But the key is moderation. Mm-hmm. Everything in moderation. I'll have a slice of cake. But the bottom line is I'm not having the whole cake. I'm not drinking the whole bottle. I'm not having steak every night. Yeah. So have fun foods. Life can't be lived, such an austere way. You have to enjoy and celebrate, but everything in moderation.
Yes.
Right. And same week, I'm sure I'll have a steak probably every maybe 4 weeks or so, and I'll probably have a burger infrequently as well. I do cook. We have attempted to do meatless Mondays at our home. And because we know, there's a lot of benefits to having a plant-based diet. Yeah. With a plant-based diet, you have to make sure that you're getting your adequate supplements, whether it be your vitamins, your fat-soluble vitamins, and your protein, and your gut-healthy bacteria. So there's a lot of supplements that you would need in order to maintain a plant-based diet, which we know is good for us. But like I say, too much, as long as you do everything in moderation, but with lifestyle medicine is fruits, vegetables, it's exercise, it's a lot of water, it's limiting all processed foods, it's limiting, high sugar drinks, and also keeping your body weight at a healthy weight, maintaining a healthy BMI.
Yes.
Avoiding
that's actually a risk factor also. Right. Listen, and in Africa, let me just go ahead and go. I'm going to tap into everybody's household because we all got somebody in our family who's, overweight or obese. I know we celebrate and love our curves and love who we are, but it's not necessarily about just what you look like, it's about your health. So guys, we got to work on losing weight. Okay, we do got to work on losing weight. So, and although I'm not a physician, I'm a nurse. I am what I have called myself vegan-ish, meaning most of the days of the week I am plant-based, but I do still eat occasional red meat. I try to eat more fish, things like that. But listen, You call it whatever you want to, as long as you're eating healthy. That's what's most important. And guys, we're coming up on our hour. This has been a great conversation. And we've just started this conversation. So just because we did the Facebook Live today on Monday doesn't mean that's it. It's over. That you don't need to have follow-up conversations. Please, we want you to continue to see your primary health care provider, see your specialist, ask the questions. Watch this Facebook Live again, share it with your friends, have a family discussion. We're all home, we're kind of quarantined, at least some of y'all act like it ain't happening, but for most of us, we are quarantined. So let's have let's talk about these topics because as Dr. O'Connor said earlier, we want to have the discussion about having the colonoscopy or having your colon removed.
Yeah.
I think that's that's like, if this is a mic drop type of, it is. It's like, oh, did she really yes, she did. But this is why I love this platform, because we get to ask these questions, and although some of it is lighthearted, it's really, it is a serious conversation because we don't have to know you to care for you and to love you. We do. And that's why, these are some well-esteemed colleagues of mine, physicians here, and they're taking time to enter into your homes, to talk to you, to answer your questions. I mean, some of these questions, unless these are your doctors here, you may not even get this level of quality conversation from your physician, but don't give me the line. I don't know. But these are, I want to really thank Dr. Metcalf and Dr. O'Connor for coming in, jump-starting this conversation. And you guys, make sure to follow them as well. They're on social media. They are doing great things. They're both practicing physicians. So if you're in their area, need a consult, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to see you. So if you can let's start with lady first, Dr. O'Connor. If you can just tell people a little bit about where they can find you and follow up so they can connect with you.
Yeah, I'm on social media. I mean, you can find me on Facebook, Lynn O'Connor MD, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. My office, I have one in Huntington, New York, and I have one in Rockville Center. The number is 631-350-6277, 631-350-6277. And you can also find a lot more information on my website. It's colon and rectal surgery of New York.com, all spelled out, so it's that easy. Colon and rectal surgery of New York.com. I'd be more than happy to answer questions. Feel free to come in, make an appointment, and we can get you seen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Dr. Metcalf, where can people can connect with you and follow up with you? I mean, outside of watching you on television, we see you on TV too, but where else can they follow you or consult with you?
Well, Facebook, of course, and all my handles on Twitter and Instagram is Scott Metcalf, MD, and we are actually opening up another practice right here in Atlanta hopefully within the next 3 or 4 weeks. It's called Chastain Integrative Medicine. So you can find me, and that will be our website name, Chastain Integrative Medicine, and it'll be myself and my wife opening up this practice together, and she's going to be doing addiction medicine out of the practice as well. But I'll be doing preventative medicine, primary care, and all the fun things in medicine that we do as a family physician.
Oh, amazing, guys. This has been great. And let me just say this, also on this platform, dare I say it, I'm going to say it. I love seeing all this black magic. I do. You guys, you are looking at some excellent practitioners, so knowledgeable, so caring, and they look like us. They look like you. Not saying that other healthcare professionals and doctors can't, but you can't. But sometimes it just hits different when you can see someone who looks like you taking care of you. So I commend you. I celebrate you guys. I love seeing all the black magic. And here at Black.org, we celebrate our physicians. We thank all of our audience. We really strive to provide information that's helpful in your health and wellness journey. And you guys, I'm Nurse Alice. I love doing this. Please, you can follow with me. I'm on all social media platforms at Ask Nurse Alice. My website as well is AskNurseAlice.com. And this is the Exam Room with Nurse Alice. We are here every Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So until next time, guys, please make good choices, wash your hands, social distance, wear your mask, and take care of one another. Okay? So until next time, live well, my friends. Bye. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you as well.